Do you believe that our ancestors communicate with us? That's one of the trending topics that I've seen on my FYP this week, and this spooky story might answer that question for you. Now, I am somebody who believes that when you discuss the spiritual, anything can be open to debate. However, some stories definitely make you think twice, so let's go ahead and get into it. Now, this story centers around a girl named Ginger, and Ginger has been dating her boyfriend Randy for like 10 months at this point. Everything is good in the beginning, there's no problems, it's still the honeymoon phase, when all of a sudden, Ginger starts to have these terrible dreams and she can't explain why. There was one dream in particular, though, that she would remember for the rest of her life, and this dream centers around her and one of her relatives. Now, at this point in Ginger's relationship with Randy, things were about to start hitting the rocks. They were moving into month 11, and things were starting to get a little bit dicey. Randy was always trying to pick fights, he seemed moody and irrational, he would accuse Ginger of doing different things, and periodically Ginger swore she saw physical changes about Randy when he was going through these phases. Things would change about him. For instance, his eyes would appear to get a little bit darker and more intense. His energy shifted completely, and periodically she felt like she could see physical changes in his facial features. Now, of course, she thought she might have been crazy, but she didn't really have anything to base this off of. Anyways, back to the dream. There was one night in particular where Ginger was having a dream. It started off well enough. She was sitting at a park in an area in her hometown that was familiar to her, when all of a sudden she recognized this person approaching her. At first, she couldn't believe who she was seeing. It was her great grandmother. Now, her and her great grandmother were close growing up. She passed away when Ginger was a bit younger, but the two always had this very special bond. The grandmother joined her on a park bench, and they start talking, and the grandmother was like, I think you should leave. Now, Ginger couldn't figure out what she was referring to, and when she tried to ask her, the alarm clock rang. Ginger woke up, and she kept the dream at the back of her mind. The next night, another similar dream. She was sitting on the same park bench, and her great grandmother came to join her, except this time the grandmother had another message. I think you need to leave quickly. Again, Ginger couldn't figure out what she was talking about or in reference to, so she tried to ask her great grandmother, and much like the first night, an alarm clock went off, and Ginger woke up. Now, 2 weeks had gone by, and Ginger had all but forgotten the dream, but Randy's behavior started to get even more erratic. He would get mad at random things, he would accuse her of cheating, he would go through her stuff, he would pop up at her job, and everything she did came with a bout of criticism. There was nothing that she could do right. He also started to bring up his ex-girlfriend, making these comparisons, talking about her body. And again, during these phases, Ginger was certain that his features would change. She just couldn't pinpoint it. But there was one night in particular where things would change forever. Ginger had made a meal after working all day. She made this extravagant meal, several courses, and she was really excited about it, but she hoped that Randy would be too. But when Randy came home, the energy in the room just shifted. It was tense. And all of a sudden, Randy started hurling these accusations. And Ginger, for the life of her, could not explain why he was doing this. What had happened to trigger such a reaction? It got so bad that he started calling her all sorts of names, and eventually he would throw a pan at her head. That was it. So Ginger packed her stuff that night and went to a hotel. Randy was shouting after her as she left, and he alleged that this meal was restitution for her cheating on him with some guy she had never met. Anyways, Ginger got to a hotel that night and she was devastated. She had cried so hard that getting to sleep was not a hard thing for her. But when she dreamt that night, she dreamt a familiar dream. Again, she was back in the park, and in the distance, much like the previous dreams, her great grandmother was coming nearer. And she sat next to her on the bench that she had been sitting at the prior dreams, but this time something was completely different about the dreamscape. Her grandma was sitting next to her, and what was a bench had then turned to chairs, each person sitting in one apiece. There were also chairs surrounding them, filled with people that she knew, great aunts and uncles, cousins who had passed, family friends who were long gone, and Ginger couldn't figure out what was going on. The vibe of the dream changed drastically. And in front of her, she saw a man in a black cloak, and then she saw a line of people going up towards the man in the black cloak. They would look down and they would keep it moving, and eventually it was Ginger and her great grandmother's turn to go. So they exited their row of chairs, and they walked up towards the man in the black cloak. And when they got to the front, Ginger finally saw what they were looking down at. It was her. She was dead inside of a casket. This dream shook her to her core, and as she was walking away, tears streaming down her face, her grandmother said, I think it's time for you to go. Ginger woke up immediately after that, and she decided she was going to break up with Randy the next day. And she did so, but not without issue. Randy got violent. She called the police, and luckily this was one of those instances where they believed her. They took Randy away, but this is when she would find out that Randy's prior girlfriends had all been victims of domestic violence at his hands. But anyways, I want to know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you think of this story. Do you think our ancestors look out for us? Drop your thoughts, and I will see you guys in my next video.